when we understand the nature of the challenge differently, this is a child who doesn't want to learn versus this is a child who doesn't experience connection and trust with us, then the strategy that we pursue is different. In the former mindset, the strategy is simple. Get that kid the hell out of here. But inside the worldview of this child who wants to learn, they want greatness for themselves. For whatever reason, they don't have belief in us and don't want to participate with us. Then let's go to work on that. Let's figure out what's involved in that.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your first book and what brought us together around that?
My first book was about school boards and the role that they can play in really unleashing what's possible for the children in their school systems. This book is really about what individual schools can do around unleashing the possibility in their students in a very different way, though, and in a way that tries to protect the instructional cord, doesn't try to take away from other instruction that needs to be happening, but that really looks at what do students need to be successful and how can we make sure that that also has an appropriate place, an appropriate venue in K-12 education. And so same core idea, like how do we lift up what's possible for children in our K-12 institutions? But the first one was around how do school boards do that? And the second one is really around how do individual schools do that?
Our first conversation made me really just pause and reflect and think about why certain systems are structured the way they are, why all those systems and structures are run by humans. Well, right now, although some of this may be evolving as we speak, we'll see how we can inform AI on this topic. But for the human piece of it, just really thinking about the way in which we interact with people to guide them to this sense of curiosity. And what I love about our conversations and your work is it sets such a clear, unwavering vision for what the expectations should be and puts the onus on what I'll call right now the adults. I know some of our students are adults. As I'm teaching university students this semester, I've been reminded not to call them kids. So, what the leaders are bringing and the perspectives and when it needs to be challenged and recentered around who should be. Some of the language I like to use here is putting students truly at the center of the learning conversation. We throw around words like student-centered all the time without any of the true underpinning that would mean. Let's start there. What do you think?
Yeah. So the book opens with a story about Jasmine. It's not her name. All the names of the students in the book have been changed. But it starts with her principal calling me and saying, hey, we need to talk about Jasmine. And Jasmine had just finished spending the summer with me. This was back when I was leading summer program for students in the district where really a lot of our principals, when they got super frustrated and concerned that the student behaviorally was going to be problematic, they would try to see if they could get them into my program throughout the summer. Such as it is that Jasmine spent the summer with us. The phone call comes in and it's after the first day of school. And the principal says, look, we had a Jasmine intervention plan because she's always been a fighter. She got in fights every year, before. And so we knew that she was going to start fights this year. The plan was that when we see the students start gathering, you kind of feel that tingle in the air where drama's about to unleash, that, we'll get in there and, a couple people will grab her and, we'll pull kids to safety. And we had this whole plan. But the true to form, after school, the first day, this crowd starts gathering. It looks like there's some angry students there in the middle. And we look up and, Jasmine comes moving at full speed right toward the middle of the circle. It's like, oh no, we got to quick get in there. And by the time we finally moved kids out of the way and got to the middle of the circle, Jasmine was standing in between these two girls and had de-escalated it and had them doing breathing exercises and then sent them on their way. And so as a principal, I'm just calling you, AJ, exactly what did y'all do this summer?
Break it down for us. So,
thing to know is that she wanted greatness and possibility in her life. And she's not a particularly violent or evil or angry child. None of those things were really true of her. She was definitely doing violent and inappropriate things, things that are unacceptable and have no place in a school. But that's what she was doing, but it's not who she was. And so the thing that my team and I really focused on is getting curious. It's like when I see a student behaving in a way that doesn't match what I know to be true of what they want for themselves and what I want for them, then I got to get curious about that. Like, well,
Right.
what are they missing? What tool don't they have in their toolbox, the presence of which would really
Mhm.
allow them to live into what they want for themselves, what I want for them? All people, my belief is that they can be relied on to use the most optimal tool in their toolbox to confront whatever the situation is that they're facing. My coaching tour wasn't to stop fighting because the principal kind of thanked me. Well, thank you for telling her to not fight anymore. It's like, actually, I don't ever tell my students to stop fighting, largely because I don't know what's true in their lives. And some of my students are coming from places where that is going to be a protective tool, but it's just a tool. And so my coaching to Jasmine at the end of the summer is uh, whatever situation you encounter when you go back to school in the fall, whichever tool you think is the most appropriate tool, use that one. What was missing wasn't that she was this evil child who just wasn't suspended sufficiently enough, is that she had one very well developed tool,
Mhm.
but whose application is incredibly limited. So, to your inquiry, no, unfortunately, that is not the approach that I see as a dominant approach. The dominant approach is when children show up and they're lacking tools that we don't have a system for teaching, our best response is let's be as punitive as possible and hope that that makes things work out. And what I'm suggesting is let's treat it like we treat math. If little Tracy shows up in math class and doesn't know any math, we don't send her home for 10 days and say, hey, you better go get some math. And when you come back, then we'll be okay. No, we say, okay, look, you failed this math quiz, but with my support and your hard work, we're going to teach you some math, and then we're going to practice and hold you accountable for demonstrating what you know. And I'm just saying behavior can be much the same way. Like, why can't we treat behavior in much the same way that we would treat deficits with math?
We're getting at the heart of something that I have seen to be true in practice is this domino effect of what you just described in Jasmine's story. That's what drives me in my work
Yeah.
is knowing that everybody is capable and this potential is within everyone. And some people have had different opportunities, different lived experiences, different things either stand in their way or push them, propel them forward to
Right.
places beyond what they may have deserved. So when I think about your story and I think about specifically, I want to talk about the nuance between this approach, your approach, and what's happening. And one thing I hear is a fundamental, deep, I'm going to say unwavering again, respect for the human to say, within you, Jasmine, I know that this exists, this potential and possibility, and that you want it and that the tools that you're using right now are you're doing the best you can with the tools that you have currently.
Yeah.
And so where I think that that differs from what has often been the structure system that you described of suspension and being punitive is the leaders of the school know the way and the students just need to conform to said way. And when it's in these areas that are outside of the academic components, to your point, there's not a mechanism for improvement there. There's only a mechanism for punishment when it's not
So
there.
one thing just to clarify, I spend a lot of time in schools. I spend a lot of time working directly with students, directly with educators. I am clearly not an expert in what children are experiencing today. Like, clearly, definitively, their experience is so divergent from my own
Mhm.
that to try to rely on my own wisdom
Mhm.
and trying to be responsive to all of their circumstances just feels ludicrous to even suggest that that's the path. And so the moment I accept that, then that just means I need to be looking for how do I prepare students to be able to stand up in as many circumstances as they're able as capable, competent members of the community, recognizing that they're still in a learning capacity, so they're not going to be very good at it. until they get some practice. I mean, the main thing separating me from most of my students is I've just had more time to practice these tools than they have. And so thinking of it from that perspective, this is a matter of tools, also unlocks another piece of clarity, is that when I see a student beating on a screw with a hammer, I should recognize that is a problem-solving exercise that they're engaged in. They're looking in their toolbox, they're seeing nothing but hammers, and they're thinking, I know we've got to get this screw with this piece of wood. At least I'm going to literally take a swing at this thing and see what we can make happen. But they're actively involved in, this is problem-solving activity. This is students who are trying to figure out, based on the tools I have, how can I get the job done in front of me? I think this is the reality that a lot of our students find themselves in, is they are in fact trying to figure it out, and it is in fact not working. In Jasmine's case, she was in fact, when she deployed the tool that she was proficient with, she was in fact engaging in problem solving, but also was in point of fact not solving the problem. This was not actually making things better in her schools. I'm actually not opposed to a punitive approach to discipline. I actually have deployed it in my own career, and would do it again under the appropriate circumstances. You bring a loaded weapon in one of my schools, and I'm going to excommunicate you from the rest of the student body as rapidly as I'm capable of doing. But that's like on the far margins of student behavior, the far margins of student behavior. On a day-to-day basis, what I really want to get curious about is kind of what's going on with this kid, and can we use one of these restorative practices first, where we're training students to lead students through this work? Can we deploy that first? And if that fails, we can always fall back on kind of the adult-led retribution approach. It works out great for students who already have access to protective features in their life. It's the little AJs and the little Tracys of our communities who don't have the sufficient amount of protective features in their life to make those systems actually fair for them. That who's disproportionately, if they don't have someone showing up for them in a powerful way, that those systems, when they're used as the primary, it's those students who are going to be disproportionately harmed by that.
AJ, on a recent podcast that I listened to you regarding, you said, and you were talking about the tools and talking about the stories like Jasmine's, and you said when you're getting curious, you think about who do I, as in you, who do I need to become such that the students see a greater opportunity here in this system than other outlets that don't have their best interests at heart. And so we've been talking about this curiosity. How do you help people shift to this type of mindset where their first instinct is curiosity rather than judgment?
That particular quote, I think the conversation was about why do our students sometimes
joining
opt into
gangs.
gangs?
Yeah.
And my experience with that's not the path that they wanted, but that seemed to be the path that made the most sense for them at the moment. And I get curious around, why would that seem to be the best path? And what occurred to me is that there's some moment in the life of that child where what they really needed was a sense of connection, a sense of belonging, a sense of tribe, maybe even a sense of safety. And they looked around for who's going to provide that, and they didn't see me. And they saw this guy on the corner slanging whatever he's slanging, offering whatever he's offering, false promises, but promises nevertheless. And however he showed up seemed more powerful in terms of its ability to meet the needs of that child than how I showed up on that day. And so they chose that path. And so that's where this curiosity has to exist. Like, who do I have to become such that when our children experience that moment of departure where I really I'm in a state of needs unmet, and I'm looking for what's the step, what tool set is really going to help me get to a place of needs met? Like, who do I have to become such that when students encounter me, they see an opportunity for a tool set that's going to make that difference for them, that is more powerful than the tool set they see being offered by the gangs or whatever other folks who may not have their best interest at heart. But that's I don't see that as a failure of the child in that moment. I see that as a failure of me as an education leader, of our education system, to really show up in a way that made it clear that what we have for you is better than what the streets have for you. And so that curiosity, I think, has to begin with an assumption that what our students really want for themselves is greatness. That what all of them really want, in their heart of hearts. And when you speak with enough gang members, when you speak with enough children in incarceration, it becomes really obvious. Like, these are just humans like you and me who want greatness in their own lives. They want to be able to meet their needs, the needs of their loved ones, the needs of their community. That's what they want, and they're looking for a way to do that. And either we offer them the tools to build that within the context of the society as we would prefer it to be, or they will use whatever tools are at their hands and will build whatever they feel like they can build, often, which will be at the expense of the systems that we want for them.
One of the ways that I've answered that same curiosity question for myself has been through the work of Zaretta Hammond, where she talks about being a warm demander. And so in some of the contexts
Yeah,
where I've
I like
been
that.
recently serving, that is the sticky, that there's research behind it and a framework and everything, but the sticky two words of just being the warm demander, curiosity and research has brought me to that in some instances. And so that might mean that I hold a line that sounds like what you've shared with, on the punitive response and things like that. There's certain things that are unacceptable behavior, and there will be a
Yeah,
line and there will be consequences. There will also be warmth that, if you're my student, that I care for you, that I want
yeah,
good for you, and that I see that greatness in you. And sometimes my experiences have been some of my students haven't heard that, and hearing it does something for them, that I watch over time when more and more people around them and they start to hear that and see that. And this is leading me to a different question.
But before you
Yeah.
transition to your next question,
Yeah.
I recognize I didn't do a good job of being concise in answering your question, which I actually did do a better job of in the book. So in the book, I actually lay out steps for adults to take. And there's actually a 6-step process that I lay out in the book. And the first of those is the one I've just described, which is that adults have to have this shift of mindset. They have to have a mindset that's focused on how do we generate possibility for students. The first major section of the book is about what are different strategies that adults can engage in, that the book actually walks you through some different practices for trying to have a mindset that's focused on student-led restoration, the development of tools, as opposed to a mindset that's focused on adult-led retribution and the development of control.
Hmm.
The next step after that then is we actually have to have a plan for this. So we actually have to have a
Turns out.
goal, a desire to help convey tools. That we actually have to want that as something that we will do as part of our schooling process, and that we actually have a goal that we can measure. Are we actually moving in the direction of that? And we have to have leaders who are committed to that. So the next 2 steps after a focused mindset is to commit leadership, and then to set the goals, set the priorities, and say, here's what we actually want to do. And I put some examples, in the book, but the 6 tools that the book mostly focuses on: responsibility, accountability, self-recognition, metacognition, active listening, and empathy. And one of the things that these 6 tools have in common is they are very teachable. And so I suggest to actually, as a school, develop a goal that says we want to see growth in terms of students' proficiency with these tools. Those are some of the next steps that I offer. Is that first, you have to have a focused mindset that believes that this work is real and doable, and then you have to really commit the leadership that we are going to pursue this, and then you have to set some priorities and say, here's how we're going to do it, and here's how we're going to measure that students are actually growing with these tools. And that my sense is that when adults take these first 3 steps in the framework, that is partially intended to help unlock some latent curiosity around what's possible for the students we serve.
I think one thing that stands out to me from your first book and this book is this focus on measuring and the rigor of that measurement. I think that sometimes well-meaning initiatives and work and frameworks can fade in our school systems when not paired with, is the change that we are setting out to make happening,
Is it happening
And
in reality? Yeah.
yeah, we said we want to do this. We said we want to provide these opportunities, but we know that what we measure is often what we end up valuing. And that's one of
Yeah.
those chicken and egg conversations. Do we measure what we value or value what we measure? Which comes first? But in these six, another thing that stands out to me here is in some of the work with my clients in the corporate space, these same tools are what
Who would like
corporate
to hire for?
leaders, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus here, but Fortune 150 companies
Yeah.
are working on these same skills with their leaders, with their employees, because some of the challenges that happen in the workplace that require adjustments to be made, just like in our school systems, come when our humans get together and have challenge. When the communication, so I'm looking at active listening. And one of the courses that I'm helping to develop for one of my clients in their reimagined Gen Ed is how to communicate in a global context. There's incredible work from Erin Mayer in the culture map that she has research that we're actively using and delving into. One of the things that keeps coming out again and again, when in doubt, listening and curiosity. If you don't know what you're doing in a conversation, if you're not sure how to navigate it, listen and talk less.
As a fourth grader, I heard once said, "This ain't rocket surgery."
Oh, I love it. I am curious in particular when we see externally what looks like apathy from students, when you might hear adults saying, oh, they just don't care, or they're not, they're not coming to class, or they're not turning in assignments, or this and that. When we see that externally, what types of questions might we ask there? What types of tools are most available in that instance? Because I see that one playing out a lot and be misunderstood.
Yeah, one of the misconceptions that I confront in the book is this idea that we've got to protect the learning environment for children who want to learn from disruption by children who do not want to learn. And the misconception that I see living at the heart of that is that there are this mysterious collection of children out there who have no desire to learn. I have not met them. I have been in schools in almost all 50 states, and I have yet to meet this mysterious group of students. What I have met are children who do not trust us to teach them and choose not to learn from us. I have met those children. So for me, this is a relational gap, that when I have students who are just completely checked out, there's something going on there that is almost certainly only going to be cured by a sense of connection. And one of the benefits of these particular six tools is that when deployed, they actually often excel at generating for students the experience of belonging, the experience of connection. I speak about both of these topics, belonging, connection, extensively in the book. But in the absence of this, in the absence of this belief that you have my best interest at heart, as a result of that, it is to my benefit to learn from you, then yes, I absolutely may have a powerful hunger for learning and a complete disinterest in anything you have to say. But that's not synonymous with I'm one of these children who doesn't want to learn. And so I think that's the disrupt that needs to happen when we understand the nature of the challenge differently. This is a child who doesn't want to learn versus this is a child who doesn't experience connection and trust with us. Then the strategy that we pursue is different. In the former worldview, in the former mindset, the strategy is simple. Get that kid the hell out of here. But inside the worldview of this child wants to learn, they want greatness for themselves. And for whatever reason, they don't have belief in us and don't want to participate with us or whatever the situation is. Then let's go to work on that. Let's figure out what's involved in that. The other side of this is that learning is just hard. Like there are some things that I am super fired up to learn, but they're just hard. And so it's going to take effort. And I'm going to have to persevere even through frustration. And then there are other things I have no interest in learning, but I apparently still have to learn. And that's even harder. one of the few things that will cause students to persevere in the face of learning just being hard. I mean, and I'm not even talking about, calculus. I'm talking about, think, first grade, little AJ coming in a little bit behind, trying to figure out how to put C, A, and T together into a and we may be here for an hour. Once he gets cat, he'll have cat till he's 150 years old. But the initial struggle could be powerful. And in the space of a sense of connection and belonging with my teacher, I'm probably going to push through that. Education, learning is going to be hard at some point, either because the content doesn't come easily, or because it's just content I don't even have any interest in. And in that moment, either there's the connection to help be a bridge beyond that moment of adversity, or there's not. And when that connection exists, what the evidence tends to suggest is that students are going to thrive in that, even when they start off non-proficient. And where that connection doesn't exist, unless there are other supportive factors in a child's life, they're probably going to fall off. And in that moment, instead of accepting full responsibility for that as the adults, I'm probably going to indulge in pretending. And the pretending that I will invent is, this kid just ain't trying to learn.
We haven't earned their trust yet when we see something that externally the language is, the pretending is, we have a bunch of students who are apathetic. They just don't want to learn.
Never
and
met
it
that kid.
Shifts it back to us to say, do they trust us? Is this a safe place for them? We have a lot of work to do on that, AJ. What just came to my mind is the gaps in development for educators in this area. And so where have you seen progress in supporting educators in this direction? I mean, perhaps it goes back to what we talked about.
So actually, complete different direction for you. I think what I've just described and what you and I are talking about is written in the hearts of practically every educator in the country.
Ooh, tell me more.
As I visit with teachers all across the country, here's what I hear is little AJ and little Tracy are busy having some conflict in their classroom, and what that teacher would really love to do, what is deeply etched on their hearts is, this is a teachable moment where I can teach them how to be really good at being human. And so I'm going to sit them both down. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to kind of mediate the situation and help them find a sense of connection with each other, and then help little AJ and little Tracy solve their navigate whatever the nature of their conflict is. I think that's what the average teacher all across the country would like to do. Why doesn't she do that? Because the way that our systems of education are set up, she ain't got the time for that. Because while these two are busy having their drama, I got 34 other kids sitting behind me that I got to work through, and I still got to teach all them how to count, to 3 today. And so this is the challenge I think that's confronted, is that I think I don't see this as a deficit of teachers wanting to show up in this way. I think it's a deficit of teachers being able to show up in this way. Now, when systems are put in place that they're able, if that's still not happening, I think that's a different story. But my sense is that the systems aren't really in place to even allow this type of work to happen. But that's also why the entirety of the book is not about adult-led restorative practices. The entirety of the book is about student-led restorative practices. The insight that I had that really tugged on my heartstrings is I noticed one thing that every school seems to have in common is there's a whole lot of kids in every single school, more so than there are adults. And so why not use the need that students have to develop proficiency with tools? Why don't we use that and give them the opportunity to develop proficiency with these tools by leading their peers through this? So first, we've got to train the Jasmines of the world. Now they have a tool, but having the tool is not synonymous with having proficiency with it. So now whenever there's drama happening in school, let Jasmine be the one who pulls students out, works them through that, and then inserts them back in. Now she's getting practice with that tool. She's gaining proficiency with it. As she gains proficiency with it through working with her peers, she is definitely gaining proficiency with it for herself in a powerful, powerful way. So as knows anyone who's ever had to teach anything, you typically get a whole lot better at the thing after you've been the one teaching it. what this does is it unlocks the ability of teachers to focus on the instruction at hand, focus on the needs of their classroom at hand, in a way that still allows that conversation that needs to happen to have happened. So we just got to figure out how do we come up with a better system than that to set teachers up for success rather than set them up to fail.
What's really standing out there to me is when it's student led, it goes back to it being exponential. When those, let's imagine for a moment these 6 tools and the competencies that are connected to those as little hexagons right now. And let's say as those light up, let's say everybody had their own beautiful hexagonal thinking board where those were lighting up as they were developing. So I am imagining as those develop for Jasmine, AJ, and Tracy over time, that then becomes exponential and scalable because to your point of the numbers, more students than adults in the classrooms on the campuses in our broader systems. So instead of saying we're going to put more on educators' plates that already have a rather full plate, what if we allowed more opportunities for students to build and develop these skills? And again, I think what's unique here, like trust them. Trust them that they have within them this capacity to grow. And I would hope that at this point, most educators understand neuroplasticity and understand the ability to continue to grow and learn, and that that's not a limited capacity that's in mind.
And that it lives within students who we've already given up on.
One of the things that you talk about, AJ, is having a choice-filled life.
Yeah.
And I love this phrase. I had the incredible opportunity to meet the late Sir Ken Robinson, and it reminds me of his book, The Element, in thinking about all the potential and power in our students. Some of his work was just really inspirational, and this choice-filled life connected me back to that idea of the element. What does a choice-filled life mean to you, and how do we support our students in having that?
Yeah, I think one of the areas where people get this twisted is I think it is our job to maximize optionality in the lives of our students. I don't think it's our job at all to in any way suggest to them which option they should pursue. So you hear people saying, oh, well, should we be about college, or should we be about career, or should we be about military? I think the answer is yes, we should be about all of our students should have all of those as an open path. And it's not on us which of those they choose. And it's definitely not on us to artificially limit that optionality in their lives by saying, oh, well, I bet AJ would be, great at X. So we're just going to track AJ into X. Like, I understand that is a path that other countries have taken and at other times in this country that we've taken. I just don't see that as being not only do I not see it as being our responsibility, I see that as actively robbing children of an optionality that it's our job to maximize, not minimize.
It might be one of the best skills for them to build is understanding that you can design your way forward and then navigating that, because it won't be you don't make that career choice one time.
Yeah.
At least not in 2025.
No, it's certainly not. And so this is what I want for children, is that we are providing with them the knowledge, the skills, the tool set necessary that they can live choice-filled lives, where they can meet the needs of themselves, their loved ones, in their communities. But to do that, we have to be willing to walk away from the notion that it's our place to choose which options, in the pantheon of optionality, is right for each child. And I realize it sounds slightly more generous, but I still think it's off base to try to coerce students into choosing that for themselves in kindergarten, middle school, even high school. And frankly, college students are still struggling, to sort this stuff out. That we get away from this idea that it's our job to try to select life trajectory for children. It is instead our job to maximize optionality.
I'm curious if you could wave a magic wand and change, let's just take the K-12 public school system, just that small area of the world, what would be true?
What would be true is that the mindset that dominates public education is that our job is to create a space for maximization. to create a space where students experience the maximal expression of who they are capable of being and what is possible for them in their life. That what would be magically true is that a maximization mindset would permeate all of public education. And unfortunately, it's not my sense that that is currently true. That what we're driven by is every single student in this building has to experience the maximal expression of what they are possible of and who they are capable of becoming for themselves, for their loved ones, for their communities. That instead what often happens is inside of the experience of constraint that we often have of adults because of externalities and school boards and state regulations and federal regulations and circumstances, that what I think it often feel like is we're just surviving. Like, can we just get through another day of school? Can we get through another week of school? Can we get through another month of school? And I think we've set our educators up to fail when they're living inside of a survival priority mindset instead of a maximization mindset because of the ways that the system is designed to fail them. That if we could redesign the system such that every educator fully was able to inhabit the maximization mindset that I believe is written on all of our hearts to do, but that is not inherent in our systems to do, that just that shift toward away from a survival priority mindset and toward a maximization mindset would unleash what is possible from the folks who are already in the classroom today.
And in order to do that, what would you say if only people knew?
I'd go back to the tools. If only people knew that what we see from students is less a byproduct of their intentions and more a byproduct of their tool set. If people knew that, I think we go to work on figuring, all right, which tool is missing right now? Is it a wrench? Is it a set of pliers? Is it a screwdriver? We definitely know it ain't a hammer. They got some hammers in that box. Which tool is missing? If people knew that what they're experiencing from students is often a deficit, not of intention and desire around greatness, but a deficit of tools, then I think how we would approach when little Tracy is being little Tracy, I think that would be,
I do.
I think it would be completely different.
Oh, AJ, I really enjoy talking about these concepts and really hearing your insights and your wealth of expertise. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I want to leave our listeners with where to find you, where to find your book, anything else that you might leave them with that's connected to these topics, resources. And we'll put all of that in the episode description so people can find it.
Yeah. So the first place to go is basically all of the resources for schools to try to implement a student-led approach to restorative practices to this really rich tool building mechanism are all available. They're all freely on the website. Go grab them. It's studentledrp.org, as in student-led restorative practices, studentledrp.org. Wonderful.
AJ, thank you again for the work you're doing. I'm so excited to stay connected and really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure to be here, Tracy. Thanks so much for having me again.
Thanks so much for listening to the Building Thinkers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a podcast rating and review. That helps more listeners find us in the world of podcasting algorithms. You can find out more about my learning and development strategy services at buildingthinkers.com. And remember, there's no limit to what you can learn.